I'm Ilana Muhlstein, registered dietitian nutritionist and host of Living Healthy, Living Well. On today's episode, we're going to explore sugar and its addictive qualities and learn how we're going to wean off of sugar, not only to guarantee us a healthier body, but to also guarantee us a healthier, brighter smile. And we're going to be having on Dr. Gabe Rosenthal, a dentist with a thriving practice in Los Angeles, California. Oh, sugar. While extremely delicious, it's also a very dangerous substance. This is due to the fact that it's not only damaging to our body, but it's also very damaging to our teeth and actually each specific organ in and of itself. And it's also highly addictive. We have a pleasure center in our brain called the nucleus accumbens, and it's very excited by sugar in just about the same effect as drugs. In fact, one study found that Oreos activated this pleasure center nucleus accumbens even more than cocaine and morphine, which suggests that the combination of sugar and fat may be more addictive than sugar alone. And through several of these sugar addiction studies, we've really grown to acknowledge that sugar is essentially giving us a high, which means we tend to choose these foods when we're feeling at a low. Other clinical studies have shown that when cortisol, our stress hormone, was injected in women, they tended to reach for higher sugar foods afterwards. So we're really going for these sugary foods when we're stressed, when we're emotional, when we're down. There's really a big connection here with our feelings. So let's get into why these super sweet foods are so comforting and addictive and how we can avoid craving these sweets throughout the day. Sugar has become so addictive because it's been concentrated. In fact, if you look at corn, we took it, which is not very sweet at all and not addictive at all. But then we take whatever sweetness there is and we concentrate it and turn it into corn syrup. And then we concentrate and further process it into high fructose corn syrup. We do the same thing with wheat. There's only a slight sweetness to wheat, and no one would actually snack on plain wheat. It's not addictive at all. But when you concentrate it and you turn it into whole wheat, which has a slight sweetness and does break down into sugars, it becomes a little more offensive. And then when we strip it of its bran layer, like we learned in episode 1, and we really concentrate that flour into just that sugary, starchy center, it can become much more addictive and highly offensive. We also can't be fooled by claims of fat-free, because these foods typically take out the fat and subsequently add in tons and tons of sugar. And while sugar doesn't necessarily get classified as a fat on a food label, it can turn very quickly into fat once in the body. In fact, some sugars will turn even quicker into fat than fat from like an avocado will turn into fat. Thus, we need to check out the food labels. Now let's delve into the reason why sugar converts to fat. First, let's introduce insulin, the fat-creating and storing hormone. When our blood sugars go up in our body responding to something like Twizzlers, we need insulin to come and bring those sugars down. But insulin, like I said, creates and stores fat. So a high intake of sugar raises these insulin levels, and this spike causes fatty acids to be made out of fat molecules and stored as new fat droplets in the body. Also, we must check for sugar on nutrition labels, just like I said. The magic equation that people don't normally know is that 4 grams of sugar equals 1 teaspoon. And we really should be having teaspoons on our food labels and not grams, because as Americans, we typically don't measure things in grams. That's why it would be really helpful to show a ketchup label and show that every 1 tablespoon contains 1 teaspoon of sugar. And I think that would be a great way for us to start cutting down our sugar and realizing how much we're actually consuming throughout the day. To show you how sugar-packed foods can be, here are a few examples. So let's look at these Twizzler package. One of these Twizzlers contains a whole teaspoon of sugar. Just one little stick of a Twizzler contains a whole teaspoon of sugar. And like I said, every 1 tablespoon of ketchup, there's a whole 1 teaspoon of sugar in it. So we really need to be cognizant and read those labels and notice that magic number, 4 grams, 1 teaspoon of sugar. When reading labels, we also need to discover that sugar is a master disguiser and gets hidden under many fancy and sometimes complicated terms. For instance, there's honey and agave and nectar and maple syrup, and even things that sound somewhat healthy, like brown rice syrup and evaporated cane juice. Really, this all gets broken down into sugar. And some of those complicated terms I was talking about are anything that ends with ose. Fructose, glucose, maltose, sucrose, even lactose in milk is a sugar. Anything that ends with that ose is a sign that there are sugars in your food. These excess sugars cause inflammation and thus can lead to cancer, diabetes, arthritis, heart disease, so many complications in the body. So we also need to discover how the sugar can really start damaging our oral health and teeth, something we definitely heard a lot about as kids. The World Health Organization recommends we halve our intake of sugar to prevent dental caries, which are considered largely preventable, yet remain one of the most common diseases of childhood, which is 5 times more common than asthma in kids. The Journal of Dental Research study found that people who consumed less than 5% of calories from sugars had better dental health. For a 2,000 calorie diet, that would be 6 to 9 teaspoons of sugar, which is less than the amount in a can of Coke. Meaning in one whole day, we need to be having less sugar than a can of Coke, which means that all the hidden sugars in our bread, in our ketchup, in our condiments, in our cereals, in our yogurts, and so forth, really need to be balanced to investigate what's worth all the extra sugar and what we can really start to wean down. Sugar in the form of juices and sodas are exposing our teeth to real bacterial acids. And the CDC says that 42% of children ages 2 to 11 have cavities in as young as their baby teeth. Today we are honored to have on Dr. Gabe Rosenthal, a dentist in Los Angeles, California, and he went to USC School of Dentistry and graduated with honors. Dr. Gabe also grew up in a family of dentists, and his father's been a dentist in California for 4 decades. And we are honored to have him on today. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So Dr. Gabe, being that you grew up with a father who is a dentist, and now you're a father yourself, what are the best tips and tricks for preventing sugar load with children and preventing dental caries and cavities?
Well, the most important thing is to have some diet that's manageable. If I tell you right now to just have vegetables and water all day, it's not going to happen. But for that time of day where you just have to have the soda and the cookies and the cake, just limit it to that one time of the day so that your teeth can recover.
I love that. You know, it's always a good time to not make it a whole day worth of sugar, but seclude one part of the day. Great for weaning down a sugar addiction, but it's also great for recovering your teeth. I didn't even know that. That's great. And what have you noticed in working with people who have multiple cavities regarding their intake of juices and sugary beverages? Do you ask your clients with cavities if they drink a lot of sugar?
Yeah, so modern dentistry has a high emphasis on finding out the history of the diet, finding out their history, if they're a new patient, of how many cavities and fillings they've had, so that we could sort of monitor their eating habits, their oral hygiene, and see how we could strengthen their teeth. And anything that we fix, we make sure that the diet's good so it'll last a long, long time.
That's a great idea. I've never had a dentist inquire about my eating, but I always tell them that my teeth are good because I eat well so they can tell other people. That's great that you go and take the time to ask your patients about that. And do you ever notice the difference among plant-based eaters and their oral health versus meat lovers and meat eaters?
Yeah, well, typically people who are on a high plant diet, when they come in for their checkups and their cleanings, there's a lot less to clean up. The proteins in the meats tend to really lead to this, what we call calculus, which is a real strong buildup on the teeth, which can only be removed by a professional dental hygienist or a dentist.
Wow. Is that because the meat is just stringy?
Well, it's just the bacteria has a lot more to work with. Your mouth is filled with all kinds of bacteria, and when you have proteins, it really works as a building block to develop strong plaque and bacteria and build up.
Wow. So another great reason to eat plants is they don't get in that bacteria buildup in your teeth.
Not as much. You still have to take care of your teeth, right. Brush and floss.
I won't
after every meal.
Overdo it there.
But for the most part, if you keep that diet pretty reasonable, then your teeth will love it and they'll really respond.
So you said brush your teeth and floss after every meal.
All right, well, I'm going to hope that you're going to brush your teeth after every meal, or at least when you have a chance, especially before bed. And just flossing, all we're asking is one time a day. That's all you need to do.
So in saying one trick that you can do to improve your oral health starting today.
The easiest, most reasonable thing I say is if you're having the sweets, you're having the soda, and you want to move on, even to just the rest of your day or before you brush your teeth, just take a little cup of water, go to your water fountain, and just swish that around, and that'll really bring the pH level back to where it needs to be before you move on with your day.
That is such a good tip. And I have to say that probably would help, prevent you from wanting to go for more sweets, because you're kind of like swishing out the sweetness, getting a little change of taste. Maybe that could help prevent you from overdoing it with the sweets as well. Could be an extra bonus. And what are the long-term consequences for multiple cavities and dental caries?
Yeah, well, when you get a little cavity, you start off with a little filling. Now, once you get a cavity underneath that filling, you're moving on to crowns and root canals. So
your specialty, right?
One of them. But, the most important thing to do is to have your teeth live for a long, long time. I always say I want to make your teeth last hundreds of years, and that's because there's only so much tooth structure left. If you keep drilling and if you keep getting cavities, you're going to run out of real estate.
That's great. I love that, and it's a practical way to think about it. Just like with your eating, that every meal can either contribute to your health or can contribute to risks later down the line. Same thing with your teeth. Every time you brush and floss, you are enhancing the lifespan of your teeth. So it's really 100%. Good to think about that too. And so aside from, flossing one time a day, brushing your teeth, you said rinsing your mouth after sugar-sweetened beverages. What other beverages should we be looking out for to swish our teeth afterwards?
Yeah, well, if you're drinking anything from a sports drink to a soda, the pH level's going down, you have a lot of acid in your mouth. So anything that'll almost act like a buffer, something that can increase your saliva, so water's great. And then just, in moderation, you can have other things that you're used to.
And how does alcohol play into that? I know it's a little off topic, but I know that can really hurt the teeth as well, right?
Yeah, well, what alcohol really does is it just dries out your mouth. So the more saliva in your mouth, the better. That helps wash all that bad bacteria and all that acid away. So when you're having a lot of alcohol, you start to get a real dry mouth, and it really makes it more difficult to avoid decay and cavities.
Wow. So when you're talking about something like a pina colada with alcohol and tons of sugar,
it's a double whammy.
It's a double whammy. You better be rinsing out that mouth afterwards, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. So we learned a lot today. Thank you so much for coming on, Gabe.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Gabe. He's a friend of mine, so I get confused. And can you tell our audience where they can find you?
Yeah, for more information, I'm really easy to find. You can just go to my website. It's GabeRosenthalDDS.com.
Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me.
The main point for today's episode is that we need to shift our sweet tooth focus to fruit, which is naturally sweet and hasn't been adulterated or concentrated in any way. So that would be whole natural fruit, not even dried fruits or juices, because we want to go to the whole natural form, which tends to be much less addictive because it's balanced and natural. Ultimately, the sweetest thing we should ever be eating are grapes and mango, because then they tend to be the sweetest fruits. This can be done by changing some of our behaviors, like drinking water sweetened with strawberries or mint and lemon, and drinking coffee and tea without any added sweeteners. A lot of people ask me, how are they going to eat their oatmeal if it's not sweet? Well, it's a good thing to realize that a lot of other countries and cultures don't sweeten their oatmeal, don't sweeten their yogurt. So we need to find a way to really enjoy these foods in their natural form. Maybe do a dash of cinnamon in your oatmeal, or put some fruit in it to make it delicious. Taking plain yogurt, unsweetened, maybe adding in cinnamon, maybe stirring in some vanilla extract, but really bringing it to its whole and natural form. So let's please cut down on our sugar intake starting today. And don't forget to reach out on Facebook or Twitter and let us know how it's going. It can definitely be a process, but we're here to help you through it. So send us your questions and share your successes. Good luck and have a great week. For more on living healthy, living well, be sure to subscribe to emPOWERme.tv. Follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook.